Welcome back to the Not Carrie Bradshaw YouTube channel. In this video, I'm devastated that I'm recapping the penultimate episode of the Gilded Age, episode 8. I really thought that we were going to at least get 10 episodes of this new series, but it looks like we're only going to get 9. So this is my recap of episode 8. I know we started this journey together late in the game, but thank you guys for joining me anyway, and thank you for jumping in the comments. Let me just get a little housekeeping out of the way. First of all, I am embarrassed that I did not think of church as the immediate culprit for the letter that got our homeboy Bannister bammed up. I don't know how I didn't think about that. Maybe I wasn't focusing enough, but everybody in the comments was like, girl, it was obviously church. So shouts out to y'all for being more perceptive than me on that. Y'all got me on that one, but that's why we in this together, so that we can combine our skills. I don't know what skills I have in the interest of this. But anyway, the second thing that has been bothering me since episode 1, what is Gladys's hair? I am fed up with Gladys's hair. It's everywhere. The bang is weirdly teased. It's like it's too much, but not enough in strange places. I find Gladys's hair to be distracting, offensive, and violent. And I'm hoping that it's a character choice, that maybe once she debuts in society, they'll do something to her hair, because I find it offensive. What is that? Somebody on Twitter was like, please give that girl a flat iron. I want a flat iron. I want scissors. I want give her a better wig. I'm stressed out by her hair. Utterly hate it. Moving on, this episode we got a lot of questions answered, but we also were able to dive into the lives of the staff a little bit more, which is one of the things that made Downton Abbey so good, is that there was story downstairs and upstairs, and sometimes they collide. And interestingly enough, there is a similar show that is or was on Hulu called Upstairs Downstairs or something like that, where same basic premise. So we have a little bit more, like, I have some questions regarding the staff that I cannot wait for season 2 to delve into. I want to know more about them. But for our main characters, we did get quite a few questions answered. So let's just jump right in. So our homeboy, George Russell, is still on trial. His lawyers are not giving what they supposed to have gave. What I like about George Russell is that he demands greatness out of everyone in his life. And he has no problem banging on the table and saying, y'all need to figure it out. This is what I pay y'all for. Throw some more money at the problem. Like, what the hell? Which is interesting, because despite his money, despite his resources, despite that I'm sure he has the best of people on it, he even hired the Pickingtons? Damn it. Really interesting history about them and their investigative powers and all that stuff. I'll put a link in the episode description about them. Why can't I think of the name of those people right now? Anyway, I just recently listened to a podcast about them, and it was interesting that he threw their name in there as like, have their main people on this to figure out what the hell is going on. And we end up getting an answer to it by just like a chance encounter, but we'll get there. Meanwhile, Mrs. Russell is actively planning Gladys's debut, but it seems like she's had it planned all along and was just waiting to pull the trigger. Like, this thing needs to be built in an alcove. Oh, do we have enough time? Oh, it's already built. It's downstairs in the basement. What about my dress? I already sent your measurements out. Like, Mrs. Russell is really on top of everything. So I think that she truly was just waiting for the opportunity to debut Gladys in a way where, again, she just needed to fill the ballroom. And it looks like there's some progress being made in that area, but we have some questions. Again, we'll get there. Meanwhile, everyone who's anyone is going to Newport for 10 days or more, or like for the summer, except for our good sis Marianne. Again, Marianne is like privileged Cinderella. Like, sis don't really get to go nowhere or really do nothing. Just cooped up in that house with them 2 old ladies. You kind of feel for her a bit. Someone on Twitter and commented that they think that Marianne is kind of an idiot. I don't think that Marianne is stupid. I think that Marianne is inexperienced. She has not been out in the world. She hasn't, you know, she was raised by a father who was kind of unscrupulous, according to his sisters. And now she's been shipped off to live with these two older ladies. At what point was she going to really get to experience life to know any better? Again, we still don't trust Mr. Rakes. But Marianne has decided that she want to marry that man, that they are going to elope. And I'm just like, I don't know what either one of y'all gonna get out of this marriage. I'm all for marrying for love, but he is not in it for love. I don't know what he in it for, but he ain't in it for the right thing. And our good sis Aurora, who always looks uncomfortable and afraid of everything all the time. Oh my God. Like, she's in a constant state of clutching her pearls. She tries to warn Marianne, like, something's not right about him. And she does it as diplomatically as possible. And it's interesting that Marianne was kind of like, I mean, he not my man. So whatever he out there doing, it's like, it's fine. It's like, but it's not though. This isn't modern times. That man really shouldn't be out here moving and shaking the way that he is when he has you on the hook for a proposal. And I kind of get annoyed with stuff like this in TV and film where a person doesn't just come out and say it. Come out and like say the thing that would just solve the problem, where it's like, oh, I tried to tell you, but there was never the right time. There were so many right times. That's a trope or like a plot device that really irritates me. I'm going to allow it for this show because it is of a certain time and people just weren't that blunt, that straightforward, that, you know, it's like everything has to be said, but under layers and layers and layers of passive aggressiveness or propriety or all this stuff. So Aurora really did try to be a good friend to Marianne, but Marianne was just like, oh, look, everything's fine. It's not though. So Oscar is the one Van Ryn who's going to Newport, and he is really serious about pursuing Gladys. Like, he really is trying to secure the bag with Gladys and her terrible hair. And he continues this conversation about like how he wants to maneuver to do this with his lover, John Adams. And John Adams is like, listen, why can't we just continue living life the way that we have to? Why do you need to go and marry somebody? And Oscar is like, baby, I need my money. I can't live the way that I want to live with just the money that I have. Gladys is a meal ticket. And if there's no scandal, if there's no talk of me being involved with a woman, people are really going to start to question my lifestyle. And people just were not allowed to be gay back then. People kind of still aren't allowed to be gay now, but this isn't the time to discuss what the hell is going on in our country with regard to that. Y'all know what I'm talking about. It's not, I'm going to go on a whole rant, but this is one of the things that I enjoy about period pieces, because you get to see how we're not that far removed from oppression. We're not that far removed from the marginalization of certain groups. But John Adams is just like, I don't see what the big deal is. And John Adams was like, well, shit, I'll come with you. And Oscar's like, no, you won't. So I'm going to say John Adams is becoming one of my favorites because he's a messy bitch who lives for drama, much like Mrs. Fish. We'll get there though. So Mr. Rakes, who just, is he an agent of chaos? I don't know. He stops by the Van Ryn house to give Peggy a letter. Nasty ass Miss Armstrong intercepts the letter, reads the letter, and we finally get the tea on what's been up with Peggy this whole time, right? And shouts out to Mrs. Bauer, who, when she went to, you know, deposit her dollar for how they, you know, bailed her out in the earlier episode for her gambling debt, she tells Aunt Ada, like, listen, I think that Armstrong is planning something really harmful against Miss Scott, and I just want to let y'all know about it. And again, I continue to appreciate that there are white people around her who support and respect and care for her well-being. You know, we're rooting for Peggy. If we ain't rooting for nobody else, we rooting for Peggy, okay? And I'm happy that there's concern for her well-being with these people despite the time period. And so I also like that Aunt Ada was like, I ain't never liked that hoe. I've never liked Armstrong, and I don't care who knows it. Again, Aunt Ada is finding her voice. Aunt Ada is not just you know, this wallflower. Like, she's really kind of coming out and just saying, like, I never cared for her. And she tells Marianne, like, you need to go and warn Miss Scott that this is happening. So we finally find out that, and one of my friends made a really good point of how upsetting so many things are that could ruin a woman back then, where basically Peggy married a man that her father didn't approve of. And they had a baby. The baby was born, stillborn. Her father forced the man to sign a paper basically saying that he was a bigamist, that he had like previously been married. And the marriage was kind of dissolved, and Peggy had to move back to New York. So that's what the drama has been between Peggy and her father, which is so upsetting, because it's like, even though it wasn't the person that you wanted for her, she did it the quote unquote right way. She got married to a man and then had a baby, and you basically want her to forget who her baby was, or that she had a baby, and she had to like put this grief aside. Like, she almost died having that baby, and when she came to, her baby was gone, and she didn't get to bury her baby properly. So she had been working with Mr. Rakes to see if they could find the midwife and all of these things, which is how she ended up coming across Marianne that one day on the train. And imagine the grief of that your father wants you to forget the man you love, but also forget that you lost a child. And the grief that she doesn't even get to really not perform, but really process, because of what? You know, like, what was the reason? In what way was it going to harm her family or her father? And I'm also frustrated that I'm not a parent, and my parents got divorced when I was quite young, but I'm always frustrated when I don't see the mother defend the daughter more. Like, as a woman who's had a baby, how can you not defend your daughter more against her father? And again, it's a different time. Maybe she wasn't empowered enough to do so, but I just want for Peggy's grief to have been taken more seriously by her family. Fortunately, that is taken seriously by the Van Ryns. And so after she comes clean to Marianne tells her, you have to tell, you know, my aunts this story before Armstrong gets to them and taints their idea of you, or, you know, whatever. So unbeknownst to us, Armstrong had already told Aunt Agnes this fake version of the tea. So when they sit down and they have this confrontation, another thing that I noticed too is that Aunt Agnes started to say that she understands what it means to lose a child. And Aunt Ada tried to step in and to say something, but Agnes cut her off. And I want to know what it was that she was going to say about having lost a child. I hope that we get to circle back and to find, because I don't think that was a throwaway moment. I think it was something very small, but I think it meant something, and maybe we'll see what it means later. I wonder if maybe she lost a kid due to like her husband's abuse or something like that. But there was so much compassion shown for Peggy in that moment. And they also called Armstrong out on her lie. And I was really happy to see that they ultimately, you know, I applaud Peggy for her emotional maturity and emotional awareness to know that, like, it's probably not in her best interest to stay in the house anymore, because Armstrong is going to continue being this type of hateful bitch, and it's only going to get worse now that she's gotten caught in a lie, and she's just going to continue to try to trip Peggy up, because she just has it in for Peggy. And that's just so frustrating for me, because I really cannot stand mean-spirited shit, and this is really for no reason. Like, this woman's done absolutely nothing to you. And I wanted Armstrong to be fired, but again, Peggy had enough emotional awareness and common sense to know that that's probably not really for the best right now. And Aunt Agnes had to acknowledge it too, like, to train a new person at my age, like, it just would be easier, even though they fully acknowledged that they would prefer that it was Peggy who could stay. And I really love that Aunt Agnes does not like much of anyone. She doesn't like much change. She doesn't like anything new, but she has a huge amount of respect for Peggy, because Peggy is a woman who is making her own way in the world. But I'm curious why she doesn't want that for Marianne. I think it's a thing of like, maybe she isn't as invested in Peggy because Peggy is from a different race and obviously she has to be from a different class. And so maybe there's the understanding there or something that Black women maybe have to work, even though maybe Peggy doesn't actually have to work because she comes from wealth. I would love to see an Agnes have the same respect for Marianne that she does for Peggy. But Marianne isn't being positioned to where she can do the things that Peggy can do. But either way, I'm happy to see the rapport and the respect and the deference that she has for her, and her insistence that she stays. And, you know, Peggy just knows like it's time for me to move on, and like I appreciate what you did for me here. And I love the conversation that Peggy is really my type of bitch. I love that when she sat down with her mom, you know, Peggy was like, you know, if my daddy want to talk about it, we can talk about it. Like, what's up? If he want to argue, I'm here to argue. And, you know, her mom was like, girl, calm down. I just love that she's her own person. I love that she is a journalist and a writer, and that she stands up for herself in as much as she can, and that she's trying to make her own way in the world. I love the character so much, and that she's actually an amalgamation of a couple of different actual living Black women at the time. So Marianne has this chance encounter at Bloomingdale's where the woman who she comes to know earlier in the day as Mr. Russell's stenographer left her handbag on the counter at Bloomingdale's. You see how shopping can save your life sometimes? Long story short, too long don't read. The middle manager, Dixon, has been skimming money off the top of Mr. Russell's business for a while. The stenographer got involved, held on to a letter that Mr. Russell actually wrote to his wife about the fact that like a designer or an architect was going to cost too much, so let's go with a cheaper option. They used that as a way to justify or to say that he knew that they were using cheaper materials for the train, and that's what caused the accident, blah, 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 blah. So the stenographer and this middle manager, Mr. Dixon, really conspired to try to bring Mr. Russell down, to try to ruin his life. And were it not for that chance encounter that Marianne had at Bloomingdale's, they would have succeeded because the lawyers could not find any trace of like where this money was. But of course, they was just like using this money to go shopping. I mean, I'm sure they was using it for something else, but it's just like scammers don't always get caught because they want to be flashy. Of course, you got caught stealing at Bloomingdale's. What do you think this is, Atlanta? Calm down, ignorant ass. Here's my question. Do y'all think that Mr. Russell was too hard on her? Because I was discussing the show with my friend, and he was like, what I really like about George Russell is that he's perfectly nice and reasonable until someone crosses him, and then it's gloves off, I don't owe you shit. That ruthlessness where it is warranted is kind of admirable. Like initially I was like, oh my God, like she's really going to have to like scrub floors for the rest of her life, whatever. But it's like, this is also, these were her choices. So here we are. But slide in the comments and let me know if y'all thought that Mr. Russell was like a bit harsh on her. You know, I have my notes. So meanwhile in Newport, Mrs. Fish is a messy bitch who lives for drama. John Adams pops up on Oscar and them at the casino, and John Adams actually starts wooing Gladys much better than Oscar could. Like Oscar was kind of like making a little bit of headway, I guess, but John Adams really seems to have like a softer touch and seems more sincere and more personable. He is actually succeeding at wooing Gladys better than Oscar had, and you can tell that Oscar is like flustered and frustrated. Mrs. Fish is trying to knock Mrs. Russell off her game by asking her about her business, and it's just like, what you will not do. I've been debating with a couple of friends who watch the show about like if we like Mrs. Russell or not. Yes and no. I do admire Mrs. Russell's ability to be quick on her toes. Like, you're not gonna catch her slipping. And she was looking at Mrs. Fish like, bitch, you will not spray me with my own tea. Don't worry about my husband got going on. But she handled it in the most diplomatic, like, society proper way possible. But Mrs. Fish was messy as hell for even asking that. And Mr. McAllister and Aurora are there kind of like coaching her of like making sure that she's getting in good with the right people. And I think she's doing a good job. Mr. McAllister makes an awful decision to sneak her into Mrs. Astor's summer home because she's curious, like, what can $200,000 get you in this area? And I want to do the math to see like what that is in today dollars. Y'all know I'm not a math person, but I'm definitely going to see like what that is in today dollars, because I feel like $200,000 will barely get you anything in today's housing market. But I'm curious to know like what that is, or what that buying power would be today. So I'm gonna look that up. That was so awkward, and like my secondhand embarrassment and my like fear was fully activated that they were going to get caught in Mrs. Astor's house. And they had to ship my girl out through the back door, and she tried to be as dignified as she could walking through that pig shit. And it's like, good for you, Mrs. Russell, but you still look a fool. Meanwhile, back in New York, Carrie, young Miss Astor, is trying to convince her mom to give Mrs. Russell a chance, because Mrs. Russell is really doing everything that she can to fill this ballroom for Gladys's debut. And Mrs. Astor is just like, oh, they came from nothing and they haven't owned land long enough. And my thing is, if you trace anything far enough back, everybody came from nothing. And like, what makes you better than another person that you were, you know, what is the phrase, like born on third? Like, fuck off. She's the worst kind of person. Like, Mrs. Astor is the worst kind of person, and I want to punch her in the face real bad. And it's interesting given what kind of ends up happening to their family, like in real life. But Carrie can't really convince Mrs. Astor to give Mrs. Russell a chance. And I'm excited to see on the season finale how, even though Mrs. Russell is making some progress in Newport with the society crew, Mrs. Astor remains unmoved. I kind of got the sense that maybe Mr. McAllister is trying to position Mrs. Russell to be the top dog instead of Mrs. Astor, that since Mrs. Astor might be spending more time in Newport, that maybe this is the position will be primed for Mrs. Russell to slide in and be at the top of society. I think I read somewhere that the Russells are supposed to be like the Rockefellers, and I think that is kind of like a real life, you know, rivalry kind of like thing that happened. So we'll see. It remains to be seen how this is actually going to impact Gladys. But I do want to pull over because we did get some questions regarding the staff. First of all, I love Jack so much. I think Jack is so adorable. I love his little extra ass accent. We found out that he has been using his off days to go visit his mother's grave. And, you know, he really kind of doesn't have anyone in the world. Him and his siblings aren't close. His mom died and his dad died shortly after. And, you know, I think this kind of softens Bridget up to him a bit more. And it's really just, Bridget is just dealing with her own trauma, like a lot of us are, but she gets to know like what some of his issues are too. So I'm excited to see how that might unfold. Bannister crossed the avenue to run up in Church's face and just cause chaos in his life. And I kind of love it. I love the shady, messy shit when it's directed towards the right person. And so he has him thinking that there are going to be some staff changes since Turner left and all this stuff like that. And we saw that Monsieur Bourdon was arguing with some woman in the street. I want to know what that tea was. Like, who was that? What was they arguing about? Because he definitely wasn't going to tell nobody nothing. Who did Watson pull up on? Who is this woman that Watson has been stalking? Is it a daughter? Is it an old lover? Who is this person? Please tell me if you guys have theories. If I'm way off, like, I hope y'all know something that I don't, because I want to know who that woman is so badly. And I think that's it. That is it for the penultimate episode of season 1 of The Gilded Age. I really cannot believe that the season finale is next week. I'm not ready for it to be over. I feel like we're not going to get season 2 until like 2024, which I can be okay with if they just give us like a shit ton of really good episodes. Like, can we at least get like 15 episodes, like post-COVID production, like, please. Oh my gosh. So slide in the comments, let me know what you guys thought about this episode. Let me know your predictions for the season finale, and be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, join my Patreon, help me to continue creating free content, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.